Pick Computer Science. In video 19 we start to look at coding HTML. So where do we start? Well, there are lots of really good tools in websites out there to help you get started. So one really good example is codeacademy.com, where you have these panes where you can try out your HTML, and you might see another pane where it shows you what the output from your HTML would look like in a web browser. Another one is codio.com. And one of my favorites is W3 Schools, which is a really good point of reference to look at what different tags do, but also of course includes this functionality to try out some HTML and to see its results. So you have the option of trying out some HTML coding using such tools, but what I far prefer is the traditional way, and the way that the first real programmers of HTML used, is to load up Notepad, a simple text editor, to type our HTML into there and to see the results in our default browser on our PC. So we'll normally find Notepad by clicking on Start, All Programs, Accessories, and it should be in there, and there it is loaded up. Any text editor will do. There are other variants of Notepad. You can use WordPad. There's something called Notepad++, which is quite popular, and you can get some which have tools to check syntax of languages such as HTML. A particular favourite of mine is CSE HTML Validator Lite, which is a nice bit of freeware that will do that for you and give you that extra bit of functionality. But to start with, Notepad is the ideal tool. So the first thing I might do to try things out might be to type in some text into Notepad and then save it. So I've given it a name here, click on save. Now if I go into my file manager, see where I've saved that file to, it saved it like most text editors will, with the default file format of TXT for text file. And if I was to double click on that, it would just load it back up into Notepad again for me. And that's not what we want. We want to save this as a HTML file that will load as default into a web browser. So back to Notepad, File, Save As, and this time instead of having .txt on the end, make sure we put in either .htm or .html. Now when I do that and I go back to my file explorer, I'll have a new file there, and we can actually forget the txt one, which is a HTML file. You see it's associated with my default browser, which is Google Chrome in this case. If Internet Explorer was my default browser on this computer, then this web page would load up by default into Internet Explorer, and it would have the Internet Explorer icon there. So double clicking on the file should load my web page up into Google Chrome, and there it is. And as we can see, it's just got the text that I've entered into Notepad and nothing more. No formatting or anything yet, which you might expect because I didn't put anything else into Notepad. Now to make this a little bit more interesting, I'm going to start to do a lot of alt tabbing. So holding down alt on your keyboard and pressing tab, as you probably know, allows you to skip through the different programs that you have open on the computer, and when you let go, it takes you to the program that was highlighted during the alt tab. So we'll use that quite a bit. That's something you want to try and master if you haven't already. Now I've been a bit lazy in setting this up already because I haven't used some of the tags that you should do when first building a HTML web page. So I'm just going to move my text down a bit. I'm going to start to introduce the sort of standard tags that every HTML web page has. And tags, as you've already seen, are usually surrounded by our crocodile mouths brackets. So the first tag I'm going to include is HTML. That's a tag that opens and also closes. And when we close tags, we generally close them with a / before the name of the tag. So that's the format that lots of tags have. You open them with a straight crocodile's mouths like that, and when you close them with the / included before the name, and that's the only difference usually. There are other conventions for closing tags where the / doesn't go before the tag name, but this is the format, this is the convention that I've always learned and I've always used, and it's the one that the exam board are happy with as well, so that's fine for now. The other two standard tags that appear in every web page are head, open it, close it, and body. So I'm just going to be a bit lazy here. Control-C, Control-V, put the / in. Now, they both appear inside of the HTML tag. So that is your general structure of a web page. Anything that goes inside the body tags or within the body tags is what appears in this main window of a web page. Okay. Anything that appears or anything that goes inside the head tag is usually something that is hidden from the user or doesn't appear in this main window. Okay, but more on the head tag in a short while. What I'm going to do now is just cut and paste my text inside my body tag, so I'm following conventions, having the text where it's supposed to be. I'm just going to save my web page. I'm going to Alt-Tab back to it in the browser, and I'm going to refresh it. Now nothing's changed, understandably, but my HTML is actually now following a better standard, and somebody looking at it will start to understand what's happening in there a little bit more. If I was to return to my code and decide that there was a change that needed to be made to what's displayed in my web page, I could make that change. So if I decided that apostrophe wasn't necessary in the title of my page here, instead of going through the rigmarole of going and clicking on File and Save here now, I'm just going to quickly do a Control and S, which is the usual shortcut for saving any type of document. I'm going to Alt-Tab to my browser, and instead of clicking on Refresh, I'm going to hit F5 on my keyboard, and then I'm speeding my development process up. I'm Alt-Tabbing, I'm Control and S-ing, I'm Alt-Tabbing, and I'm F5ing to really get faster at viewing changes that I've made to my HTML. So next I'm going to actually change this text so it has a different appearance. So I'm going to just hit a couple of lines here just to space things out a bit and see my HTML code a bit better. And I'm going to wrap my title with another tag. So when I say wrap, it means I'm going to put the opening of the tag before it, and I'm going to close the same tag after it. Now this is the H1 tag, and H stands for heading, and there are different levels of heading. Heading H1 for heading 1, H2 for a smaller heading, H3 for an even smaller heading. So let's just try this one out. So Control and S, Alt-Tab, F5, and there I have formatted some text using a HTML tag there. So next I'm going to try out a H2 tag. Again, Control and S, Alt-Tab, F5, and I've got a smaller heading. I'm just going to make a couple of changes now to what I've just done. So I'm going to go back to Notepad. I'm going to take off the H2 tag, so it's no longer going to be a heading on that new text. And I'm actually just going to separate out some of this into a bit of a list by moving different parts of it onto different lines. There we go. So Control and S, Alt-Tab, F5. And something curious has happened. If we go back and look at the HTML again, the words jokes, games and stories are all on separate lines, but in my browser they are not. So something curious has happened. And what happened is that HTML, remember, isn't WYSIWYG, isn't what you see is what you get. So just because I've moved these onto separate lines doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to appear as separate lines in my web browser. I have to make use of a tag to force them onto new lines. Now this tag is called BR, short for break, short for line break if you like, same as hitting enter on a keyboard. So I'm going to use that there and there and there, and that should move the text on the following lines down one line in my web browser. Notice that there is no closing part of the BR tag. You only ever open it, and that stands for a reason. I'll explain that in a minute. Let's just test it out. Control and S, Alt Tab, F5 seems to have worked, doesn't it? Yeah. Tags like H1 that wrap around bits of text in order to format them, it stands to reason that they need an opening part and a closing part. But BR doesn't wrap around anything. What BR does is just separate out one bit of text from another. Therefore, it doesn't need a closing element, which is interesting and just something to certainly make note of. The following tags I'm about to put in are all ones that wrap around other elements. So I'm using the B tag, the U tag, and the I tag, and they will all do some sort of formatting to the text that's in our list. So if I save that and go and look at the changes now, you'll see that B bolds it, U underlines it, and I italicizes it. Interestingly, if I was to replace the I with EM, save, refresh, nothing seems to have changed, and that's because EM does the same as I, puts the word into italics. Next, I'm going to introduce a further tag which is going to be really flexible in terms of formatting text, and this is the font tag. So I'm just going to wrap the font tag around this bit of text, of course closing it here, and what this will do, if we use extra settings of the font tag, and extra settings, by that I mean properties, and we'll use properties of various tags, is where you go inside the opening of the tag, just after the name of the tag you hit space, and you can start to use some of its properties. So we're sort of drilling down into more flexibility and more power within a tag. So I might use the face tag and make that equal to the name of a font. I don't know why it's not called font, it's called face, this property, but it will basically set the font of the text which is being wrapped by the font tag. So let's try it out. And there we go, it's changed that text to the Joe command font. If I wanted to change the size of that text now, well, it's going to use the size property. Let's see what 15 does. Yep, 15's made it pretty big. So these might not equate to the same font sizes that you're used to in something like Word or PowerPoint, but you just have to have a play around with them and get the right size that you like. We could change the colour. So I'm going to use the colour property. So far I've used 3 properties. Note the spelling of colour there. That's the US English spelling, not the UK English spelling, which is a shame considering it was a Brit that invented HTML. Nevertheless, colour equals, and maybe in quotes, red. Notice I didn't put the quotes round the numerical value for size, and I probably wouldn't need to put the quotes round the text value Joe command or the text value red, because they are single words. But if I'd have used Comic Sans, for instance, as my font face, that would be 2 words, and it would be certainly advisable to put that inside quotes. But you'll get used to this as you go along. So let's try that. Beauty. This might be a good time to talk about why HTML is such a great place to maybe start learning how to program. Programming is often about precision and this idea of GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Whatever you put into a computer program is what you will get out of it in terms of accuracy. So if I wasn't precise with my commands here, say I'd missed off the second quotations when setting the color property of the font tag here, and I saved it and I went back to my browser and refreshed, I may get very unexpected results. So yeah, HTML is a great place to start programming because it encourages precision in order to get the desired results. Similarly, if I was to miss closing a tag like the font tag, so if that was to disappear, then again I might get very unexpected results. It's not just the font tag that has properties. Many other tags have properties that you can utilize as well. Body, for example, has an interesting property that we can set, which is called BG color, and that stands for background color. So I could set that to the name of a color that I want to set it to, and hey presto, F5, we've got the results that we were looking for. You don't necessarily have to use the names of colors when setting color properties. You could say go to do a search for HTML color codes, and a website such as W3 Schools will help you find the hexadecimal codes that you might have seen before for colors. So if it was a particular yellow I wanted, then I could select it here and I could use that code instead of the name of the color when setting those color properties so you can get an exact shade that you want. There are quite a few other tags that the exam board like you to know about, tags that help you to arrange items on a page. If I was to type in some more text for my web page here, so I've popped in some new text that I'd like to appear below my little list I've created. We'll see it hasn't put it where I want it to be put, and it's also underlined it. Which I wasn't expecting, but I've just spotted why. It's because I haven't properly closed down my U tag there. So that is a lack of precision, an error live in action there that you're witnessing. So if I save that now and go and refresh, yes, that bottom line should have only been in italics, so apologies if that appeared underlined before, but it's fixed now. But my new text isn't fixed, it's not on the line I want it to be on. So I could use some more breaks, but often we'll see this tag, the P tag, being used to separate out text. So this is to signify a new paragraph. So save, back to the browser, and there I've got my new paragraph. I've quickly pasted in another line of HTML, so just some text, this time wrapped with the div tag, opening here and closing here, and the use of a property of the div tag called align. And I've set that to center. Note the American spelling again, and as you might imagine, that has centralized my text there. So another good tag for positioning things in a web page is the div tag. This time I'm going to get rid of my list that I'd created before. I'm going to recreate it, and I'm going to use a tag called UL. Open it here, close it a bit further down, and for every item in my list I'm going to include the LI tag before each item and then close it after each item. So just because I'm lazy and I try and be efficient, I'm just going to copy and paste that and change it on each line accordingly. And what that should do for me now, if I save and go and view the changes, is give me what's called an unordered list, which basically means a bullet pointed list. I can change it to a OL tag, which stands for ordered list, and that will actually change it to a numbered list. Another set of tags which are really useful for organizing content on web pages, and were pretty much all that was originally used for organizing content on web pages when the web first took off, is the table tag and its tags within, TR and TD especially. The exam board might not require to know too much about this, but I like to explain it anyway, so I'm going to use the help of W3 Schools to do so. So we can see here's an example. Table tag opens and closes. TR specifies a new row in a table. TH specifies the headings in the first row, and then every time that TD is used, it's specifying a new cell in each row, so a new column effectively in each row. So it says try it yourself, so let's go and give it a whirl. So I've clicked on that and it's whirring away. Here it comes. So there we have the use of the table tag, TR, TH and TD to organize data and information into a tabular format. Now, input forms are a big part of web pages, so text boxes to be able to type things into, submit buttons to be able to submit your data to the website. So let's have a look at how that would be created with HTML. First of all, you'd want the form tag to be opened and closed, and to surround anything, any text boxes, buttons, radio buttons, drop-down lists, anything like that you'd want to include on your form. And there are very important properties of the form tag, which if you did want to get your website using a form properly, you'd need to investigate. But we don't need to use them just to bring those form controls up on the screen. We'd need the input tag quite a lot. And this is another one of those tags, a bit like BR, which needs to be open but not closed. And you'll see why in a moment. We usually use the type property of the input tag, and if I set the type property to be text surrounded by quotes, save that and go and view in our browser, you'll see it's created as a nice text box. You would probably want to include some text to the side of it so it's labeled before the tag is created. So we can see we're starting to build up a user form that somebody can type into. I'm going to put in a BR tag, or maybe even a couple of BR tags, just to break up my text box from my next tag that I'm going to use, which is the input tag again, but this time the type property is going to be set to submit, and let's see what that does. Yeah, it gives me a button with the text submit on there. Now, it's good practice for anything on your form, any input tag, to be given an ID. So the ID for the text box could be something like user name, and the ID for the submit button could be submit, but we don't want to confuse the browser in any way. So let's give it a more meaningful name. And if you ever get into any web programming, you'll appreciate why you would need to know the ID of any form control, so you can basically access the data that's in there. Also, we don't have to have our button say submit, even though it is a submit button. We might be able to use the value property to set a different caption on the button, basically. So let's see if that's worked. And it has. Beautiful. So as well as that sort of functionality in a web page, you're more than likely going to want hyperlinks, bits of text or pictures that you can click on to take you to other web pages or websites. So let's have a look at doing those. So say I wanted a hyperlink to the CBeebies website, maybe just underneath my heading. Let's make a bit of space there. The tag you need is not called hyperlink. It's not called HTTP or anything like that. It's called A. Yes, that's right, A. And there's a property that you need of it, which is called href. What you put in href inside the quotes is the address of the website you want to link to. So if I go and grab the CBeebies Games website address, its URL, its Uniform Resource Locator, and then go and pop that into that property, then we should be able to save, go back to the browser and view what I've put into the browser. Now I've got all sorts of problems happened here. My title has become the hyperlink, all my text underneath has become the hyperlink. If I hover over it, you'll see at the bottom of the screen that it's telling me it's going to take me to that web page. So something's gone wrong. And what's gone wrong is, as well as opening the A tag, you need to close it. So I'm going to close it. And then of course inside, so the A tag wraps something inside the opening and the closing of the A tag, we want either some text or a picture, once we know how to put pictures in. So just be careful. Again, it's about precision and making sure that you use a tag correctly. So I've popped in some text. Now it's getting there, isn't it? It's getting there. Now the text has appeared. It is a link, hopefully, to the CBeebies Games website. Click on it, and it is. One problem is I wasn't expecting it to be on the same line as my red text there, so let's just go and fix that. I think that would be just a case of using a BR tag or a P tag somewhere. So it's almost there, and yeah, fixed. One other thing that we're going to put in here, of course, would be pictures, images, graphics, whatever you want to call them. And I have a picture that I want to include in my web page. It's called Kids Fun, and it's a JPEG image, which that's important to remember. So if I was going to go and put that maybe underneath my heading as well, for this I need the IMG tag, and the IMG tag doesn't need the closing section because that is just something that appears. Images don't wrap around anything, they just stand alone. So it needs a property which is called src, and we make that equal to the name of the image file. So that's done, so I should be able to save that now and hopefully go and view it, or maybe not. Let's see, F5, and I've got what we'd call a sort of broken link to an image, the sort of icon you see when an image isn't displaying on a web page. So to investigate why, I might just go and see that this image, Kids Fun JPEG, is actually just on the root of my C drive. Now that image ideally wants to go in the same folder as my web page, my HTML file. So I'm just going to drag it into my temp folder, go into my temp folder, and now it is in there. Okay, so it ideally wants to be what we call relative next to the HTML page. If it isn't, you have to supply a fuller path in here. So I could maybe have done this, but I didn't. I moved it. So now hopefully this time it's going to display, and it doesn't. And there's another good reason for that. It's all about precision, isn't it? That is one valid extension for a JPEG image, but it's not the same as the one that's used here. So hopefully this time, if I just get rid of the E in JPEG there, Control and S, back to the browser, F5, brilliant. Probably just want to, again, some BR tags. I could use P tags, but I'm getting a bit lazy. So just stick a couple of those in. Oh, didn't quite close one of them there. Precision, precision. And there we go. That's an image into a web page. A couple of other things before we go today. With some examples of HTML, you might see something like that starting off our HTML code, rather than just the straight and traditional and classic HTML tag there. That's just sort of standard way that things are happening now. You might see that sort of thing at the beginning of a HTML file. It's just something to be aware of, but nothing to worry about. It doesn't change the output in any way. One last tag to try for today is quite an interesting one, and it's one that actually goes inside of our head tag, if you remember that far back. These are things that are not shown inside our main body of a web page, anything in this main window. You might have noticed that our title on our tab is just the name of the web page, including the file extension. That can be changed. So let's see how to do it. We go and use the title tag, and put some text inside the title tag. Save, and that should change the text that appears on our tab. This file is the exam board's guide to pseudocode, and the sort of code they'll expect you to know for an exam. And this is the HTML section. And we've covered the vast majority of the tags that are mentioned here. The only ones we haven't looked at, we'll look at in the next couple of videos. One is the link tag, and another is the script tag. It says any other elements used will be explained in the question. So if they're writing a question or giving you a question about HTML and they're talking about any of the tags, they'll really explain what it does, hopefully. Notice that the image tag, they want you to know about, as well as the src property, they want you to know about something called the alt property, the height property, and the width property. So that's something you could look up for homework and extend yourself and your learning with. You could look up the vast array of other tags and attributes or properties of HTML with a website like W3 Schools, and have lots of fun building your own web pages and websites using those examples to help you. You could look up all of the other types of tags that can be used for web form components, things for drop-down lists, radio buttons, any of the sort of form widgets that you might want to include on a web form. I think the last thing to say for today's video really is the sort of question you get on this sort of code in an exam might look like something where they give you what a web page looks like. So it could be this one, although hopefully not one as disgusting in its colours as this one, and ask you to say which tag might have been used to create this, which tag might have been used to put in this image, which tag might have been used to put in the hyperlink, or to colour this text, or to create this list, etc., etc. So that's one of the main things to be aware of, is the type of question that you might get. Otherwise, it's bye for now, and I hope you enjoyed that very long video.